Greetings, welcome back. I want to talk today a little bit about Herod the Builder, and this is part one. We'll see how far we get on this recording. But Herod, of course, as we look at the New Testament period, Herod was a great builder, as you may know. He had many building projects, including several fortresses that he built around his kingdom. Uh, he's quite paranoid, as described by Josephus, as depicted in the New Testament to some degree, and also, I think, archaeologically speaking, from the fortresses he had. Herod was the kind of a person who didn't trust really anyone. He didn't trust his own sons, and certainly if someone would come and tell him there is a new king that's been born, this would make him quite paranoid. So his most famous one's pictured here. This is Masada, but he also had mentioned in the New Testament Machaerus, and Herodian is nearby, and there were others as well. He also had some palaces, including one in Jericho and his in winter palace in Jericho and Jerusalem. Well, one of his main building projects that we'll talk about today is Caesarea, or called Caesarea Maritima, or Caesarea on the Sea. Herod had this constructed. There are no good harbors in Palestine or ancient Israel, really good harbors. And so we see that he has this one constructed, and it's quite really a construction feat. Constructed between 22 and 10 BC on a smaller site called Stratos Tower. Becomes the seat of the government of Rome in Palestine, and of course a real example of Roman engineering. Here's where it's located on the map. This is what it looks like. You can look at these at your leisure, but you can see there's a Crusader area today. It's still there, but the harbor is out here. And many things to see here. It's a national park. Been there several times. We'll also look out here. Here's the aqueducts that we'll take a look at. I think I'll have a few pictures of those later. So the theater is usually places where people go as a theater. Then they go down along by the harbor, and they've been doing a lot of excavating down here. Here's just one example of a Roman lamp found at Caesarea. Roman lamps, of course, you would fill it here in this area. You'd put the wick down here and light it, and you would fill it with olive oil. This became the way that they could light things up, and a good example of what they were like in the New Testament period. Here's a close-up drawing of the harbor itself. I'll let you look at that with some of the excavation areas. Those have been expanded. Caesarea is mentioned 17 times in the New Testament, visited by both Philip and Paul, and Cornelius lives here when he is converted. Herod Agrippa I died here in AD 41. You can look up those references. Here's a nice picture that shows that aqueduct out on the beach. Here's an outer one. Here's the other one here. It's right on the Mediterranean. It's really a nice place to visit. You come into this area, you can walk through here and get this picture. Of course, it's hard to get a picture like this with the aerial photo that this one is. It shows you it. The Romans, of course, always were very concerned, as everyone's concerned, with water supply, and one of their greatest engineering achievements were these great aqueducts that they would build. Paul passes through Caesarea. He was a prisoner here in Caesarea, and we see, of course, later he will go on to Rome, be sent to Rome. Here is a picture of the theater at Caesarea. Estimated population in Herod's day, about 40,000. It would grow to its largest extent during the Byzantine period, which is just after the Roman period, to about 100,000. And the Crusader part of it was much smaller, maybe 12,000. Crusaders held this city for a while, probably about 60 years or more. The Roman Byzantine also had the theater, and you can see all the things that are listed: synagogues, hippodromes, and so forth. You can look at those on the map. Byzantine period, it's famous for Christian scholars, Pamphilus, who's mentioned in early writings, Origen, and Eusebius, sometimes called the father of church history, and continues to be excavated even today by a number of excavation teams. So it has been the site of a lot of excavation because it's really a premier site, and Israel has made a national park around it. Here's another view of that aqueduct. You see a bus over here with some people for scale. Here's an aerial view of the harbor where you can actually see the remains of the harbor out in the water, and this has been the scene of a lot of excavation too. Of course, this is underwater archaeology that's been done here. But the Romans, in the Roman period, they developed concrete, and actually developed concrete that would solidify underwater. And so they built really a fabulous harbor here in this area, and this is where the boats would come through this way. Here's an artist drawing. I think this was National Geographic did this, and was also in a book. Anyway, you can see the Temple to Augustus here. You can see the place where the boats would come through. They could pull a chain across here to keep them out. The lighthouse, the outer areas, all along here would be docks and storage for the ships. So this was really an amazing place, and we know a lot about it, and it really helps us know a lot about what the Romans were doing. They would make a form like this and pour concrete down into it that would actually solidify underwater. They pull this into place, fill it up, and then that's how they would build it. Of course, this is part of massive trade routes that the Romans had across the Mediterranean, and Caesarea Maritima then becomes a major center down here. It would connect to Egypt, it would connect up to Lebanon, Turkey, and beyond. Some of the coins from there. Coins give us a lot of information about trade, and you can look at those later. Here's some of the storage jars that have been found. This is a amphora. These would be used for wine and oil. They a lot of times had a stamp on the handle up here at the top that would tell where they were from. The Romans also had at Caesarea during the Roman period fish garum, it's called Garum, garum. Garum is a fish sauce. They would take small fish, sort of like sardines. They would keep them in big vats outside. They would then salt them and just basically let them almost putrefy, but they would salt them out there, and then they would sort of drain out, skim out some of the bones, and they would put that fish sauce into jars like this. It's sort of comparable to soy sauce. If you go to, say, a Chinese market, Asian market, you can find fish sauce still for sale. The Romans used it in all kinds of recipes to add salt and flavor to their cooking. Head of a statue that was found. Some more lamps. These are mold-made lamps, by the way. These are Roman mold-made lamps. They would make the top part and then the bottom part in a different mold, and then put them together to make these lamps. This one is later. This is from the Umayyad Abbasid period. So this is from the Islamic period here. This one looks to be also a later lamp, probably from the Crusader or later periods. But these three are Roman, they're fancy mold-made lamps, which you can see they have impressions. This looks like maybe Jupiter or Neptune. That's probably Neptune right there. Well, various keys that are found. We sometimes don't think about that, but they lock their doors. Here, the keys are familiar to us. Underwater archaeology. Here's some of the concrete that was used. You can see they're measuring. They use a system where they vacuum up the sand and they run it up to the surface, and it goes through a screen on the boat, and then the water comes back out. This is part of the way that they excavate here. Of course, a very different style of archaeology. Here we go. Here's that vacuum hose I was talking about. This will suck in the water, but it also sucks in the sand and stuff around it that then reveals the artifact, because using a trowel and standard methods we'd use on the surface really aren't going to work that well. But this is a system that they use quite effectively, really. It's a very interesting field, marine archaeology or underwater archaeology. Texas A&M has a big program in it. Here's a boat. The water, the seawater, tends to preserve the wood, and so before they would bring any of this up, they would map it, they would draw it, they would measure it, and so forth. They would look for artifacts around it, see the position where things were in the boat. Maybe it crashed here, sunk here, might have had cargo on it that wasn't all retrieved. So just a lot of data from there, and then they can pull up the wood. They have to be very careful because it'll begin to deteriorate quite rapidly. Here's some graffiti inside the boat. Maybe they're keeping track, like we count. We've got this many shipments or this many containers. Here are some anchors. You can see how the anchors have the wood through here. You see a lot of these around harbor areas in the Roman period. These sort of elongated oval shape stones with a hole in the top and then two holes down here. And they would put wood through here, and this would drag the bottom. They put the rope on here and throw it over. Let's move to Herodian. Herodian was one of his fortresses to the south of Jerusalem, 7.5 miles, and south of Bethlehem. Josephus said it was the palace and a fortress, of course, for Herod the Great. And Herod was buried here. The exact spot has been questioned. They believe they found it now, probably even since I made this PowerPoint. It will serve as a Jewish base, just like Masada during the Jewish revolt. Both of them, the first and second revolts. Here's a picture of it. It sort of looks like a volcano on the distance. Probably goes up a couple stories. There's a lot of white steps that go up along the side. You can visit it. You can walk up to the very top. Here's what it looks like. Again, kind of looks like a volcano. And here is another aerial view that shows you what's inside of it. So this was a natural hill with man-made walls put on top. There's towers that are there. You can see them around. The eastern tower, some thought this might be the tomb, but it appears to be down on the side near a pool. Now, the man who excavated this actually ended up dying, fell along here, and so it's kind of tragic, but he was working in that area. All right, well, we're going to end it here, and you can look for Herod the Builder Part 2. Have a good day.